Welcome to a very special edition of Ahysen Nation. We are in our new studios today, Tuesday, the 25th, and I promised you I'd give you a tour of those, and we'll do that a week from today. In preparation for this upcoming Memorial Day holiday weekend, I wanted to dedicate today's program to helping us understand what Memorial Day is and what Memorial Day isn't. There's a lot of misconceptions about Memorial Day. For example, Memorial Day is not synonymous with Veterans Day. It is not okay to say Happy Memorial Day. And most veterans don't really like it when you come up to them on Memorial Day and say, thank you for your service. So for today's show, in helping me understand, and perhaps you too, more clearly the life-changing impact losing someone to war has on a person, I visit with a big sister who lost her brother in the war. She'll share her story. Then afterward, I will share with you a short video that explains the story, the history of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I think you'll find it pretty fascinating. So let's begin. Last week I visited via Zoom with Billie Jo Alexander. She lost her little brother Thomas in 2007 while he was serving in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Billie Jo really opened my eyes to what it means to lose a loved one to war and how very different from, and in many ways more difficult than, losing someone to war is from other types of loss. She shares her story.
For me and for other people that I've talked to, the biggest challenge is, things change, they miss moments, just like anybody who's experienced a loss. But when you lose somebody in the service and then they come home, one of the biggest challenges is that we faced first off was sharing our grief with a nation. And it's a very different kind of public grief that you're having to share. And of course, you don't want to push people away because they're very appreciative of your loved one's sacrifice. I know at my brother's funeral, there was probably over 500 people who, some of them had never even met him. They're just patriotic and they wanted to show their appreciation. Well, it was very difficult and very hard because, you know, as his family, you love him and you want to grieve for him. But then as his family member on the military aspect, you're proud and you don't want to take that away from the rest of the country. So you have to very publicly share your grief in those first few days. And it's very hard because everybody, you know, comes up to you and says, hey, you know, we're so sorry for your, or they don't even know what to say, honestly. So that was the first challenge, was learning to deal with a very public grief. It's not the same as, say, when my grandmother passed, or even when our father passed after my brother passed, because it wasn't on such a big stage. And then as the years go on, you know, people are there at first because it's right there in the moment and it's public. And like my brother, he's buried in Texas, so it was all over the news in DFW and when he came home. So people are there at first, and then as with things, you know, life moves on as it should, but it becomes very hard because people seem to think that we're done with war, and we're not. You know, you can say we're pulling out, we're doing this, we're doing that, but these young men and women are deployed on a daily basis to different places all over the world, and so then you kind of feel the hurt of, are they being forgotten? And then, you know, he was killed in 2007 and it's, you know, 2021 now, and we're coming up on the anniversary of his death in September. And I will say that my biggest fear to this day is that his sacrifice will be forgotten, because the further we move away from his death, it just seems like, you know, and unfortunately the way certain things are in this country and the turmoil, the things that are going on, sometimes it's as though people have forgotten. And that's the biggest fear, is that I just don't want his sacrifice forgotten. It's not about, you know, oh, please remember me and my pain and my hurt. It's not even about that for me. It's about honoring and remembering him and what he gave up. I mean, he gave up an entire life. He gave up the, you know, never being able to have a family because he's not here. He was killed at 20. You know, and so that to me is the biggest fear that I have. And when talking to other families, it's honoring and remembering their sacrifice.
What is a mistake that you feel lay people make on Memorial Day weekend or on Memorial Day when we encounter survivors like yourself?
One mistake, and it seems sometimes it seems trivial, because I understand that Memorial Day weekend has transformed to the unofficial kickoff of summer, but it's not. It's a somber day. So people, and I understand that that's not their intention, but it's a very painful thing that they say when they say Happy Memorial Day. There's nothing happy about it for me. For me, it's a day that I take to remember and honor him. And it's a somber day. It's a day that we remember as a nation those who have fought for us and never made it home. And then the other thing that some people may not realize, and again, everybody has good intentions. I will say it took me about 8 years of grief to come to this point where I'm not angry about it anymore and look at it more as, let me educate you on why this hurts, instead of just being mad. Because at first, you know, you can carry a lot of anger with your grief. And for me, the other thing is, when they say thank you to all the veterans, it's not Veterans Day. That's in November. Memorial Day is specifically for those who did not make it home and paid the ultimate price. And when you start to treat them both as the same, then it, in my opinion, as a Gold Star family member, it dilutes what Memorial Day is meant to be. And it is meant to honor those who did not make it home and their sacrifice. Now, I come from a long line of military. My dad was in the military. Both my grandparents are. My own father will tell you, it's uncomfortable when he is thanked for his service on Memorial Day because he made it home. I have people who serve with my brother, because we're a very tight-knit family. They call and check on us on Memorial Day, just like I call and check on them. They have a hard time because it triggers survival guilt when perfect strangers will come up, or they'll know that they're in their service, or they post on their social media, I just want to thank you for your service. And for them, some of them it triggers, and it's painful because for them, it's not about them. It's about their brother or sister who didn't make it home. You know, they're home. They get to be with their family. And so while I know everybody's got great intentions and they just want to thank, because no matter what day of the week it is, we should be thankful for our military members, our service members. We really should. But on this one particular day, it just becomes very painful for those family members who are said, you know, they're being told Happy Memorial Day, or for those who serve, who have served, and they're being told thank you for their service, because it's just that one day we want to recognize the people who made the ultimate sacrifice and just allow it to be for them.
Do you remember the last conversation you had with your brother?
Yes, I do.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I actually carried guilt with it for several years. I was working late. I worked at a apartment complex over by LSU, and there's 7 years difference between us. And he had called and we were talking because his 21st birthday was coming up in January. His birthday is actually the day after mine. So we were calling and making arrangements because he was getting ready to come back home. And this was about 2 days before the accident, or before he was killed. And I don't know, we had just talked, and he was talking about, you know, getting ready to re-enlist, coming home, what we were going to do when he came home, because we were planning on going to Las Vegas to celebrate his 21st birthday. And I told him how much I loved him, and he told me he loved me. And I said, well, hey, bud, I've got to get off the phone. I've got to get, you know, it's late. Alex is expecting me home. The kids are expecting me. And he was like, no problem, Beach. I love you. I'll talk to you soon, and I'll be home in January. And I was like, okay, that's great. That's wonderful. And 24 hours later is when I was notified that he had been killed. And so I carried guilt for quite a long time, because he was in Iraq and all he wanted to do was talk to me. And I, having the luxury of the freedom that I have, and thinking, you know, nothing's going to happen to him, because he always told us, we're in the green zone. We're fine. We're fine. I was just like, okay, well, I'll talk to you in a couple more days. I love you, and I'll see you soon. And that phone call, I ended up carrying a lot of pain and guilt over that phone call for several years, until I kindly, you know, through the process of healing, and grief is a fickle thing. You know, there are still some days where I've moved forward and I've done and I'm doing things. And then there's other days where I'm like, not today. It's just not going to happen today. You know, I just take it moment by moment. I'm much further, I believe, in the process, but you know, it took me a long time to overcome the fact that I let my brother go on that phone conversation. He didn't end it. I ended it. So that was very hard.
How was your brother killed?
He was killed by an IED. He was killed in the deadliest month of the Iraq War in 2007. It was about the height of when it was the deadliest month. It was all over the media about how many IED attacks there had been. And we just didn't think about it because he kept telling us he was safe. I mean, and I guess that was him protecting us. It wasn't until after we found out that that wasn't his first IED attack that he had been under. He was on a mission to go, and what they did was there was a bridge that continually got blown up by IEDs. So they thought they spotted another one. He was a Cav scout, so they were out to go and see if there was another one there so they could get it disarmed. Well, on his way there, he crossed over a median, and in that median was probably one of the largest IEDs, and it went off. So
what do you want people to know going into this coming Memorial Day about some of the things you already talked about, certainly, but is there anything you're leaving out that you want to share with people, especially people that are non-military, that have never experienced what you've experienced?
Well, I just want them to take a moment. That's the biggest thing. People don't realize there are a lot of activities that you can do and you can take your children to teach them and to understand the sacrifices that men and women have made over the years for this country. You know, for instance, there's the weekend before Memorial Day, there's a flag planting ceremony that the Blue Star Moms host every year, and they read they read every Louisiana resident's name since 9/11, and they plant flags at the state capitol for every fallen Louisiana resident since the American Revolution. That's a lot of flags. That's a lot of names. And when you're there and you participate, and they're always looking for volunteers, always looking for volunteers to place those flags. And I go every year. When you go and you see those flags, you start to realize the sacrifice that's made. Then you actually hear the names from the recent incidences since 9/11, and the families are there. Take a moment. We want to talk about our loved one. It's painful, yeah, but we want to talk about it. We want to share. Come up. You'll see them. They're wearing a Gold Star pin. They're usually probably have name tags, or their loved one's dog tags, like I'm wearing, and you'll know who they are because we always wear our shirts. Just go up to them and say, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry for your loss, and I appreciate your loved one. Tell me about them." Because we love saying their name. I love saying my brother's name. You know, his name was Thomas Hilbert, and I don't want his name forgotten. And that's the biggest thing. If you don't have anybody in the military and you see somebody and you know that they're a Gold Star family member, or you can participate in a local activity, then just do it and take kids out to do it. My kids have participated their entire life. They know no different. You know, if you the USS Kid, because I've spoken there before on Memorial Day. They have and it doesn't take long. It really doesn't, guys. It's a whole hour, maybe two out of your day to stop and remember these.
And what was he in the military, and what branch?
He was in the Army. He was a corporal. And if I did not tell you he was a Cav Scout, he would be mad at me because he was extremely proud of being a Cav Scout. As much as and as angry as I was when he first passed, because I mean, it was hard. You had to share. We got notified on a Friday that he had been killed, but he didn't actually come home for 2 weeks. So we didn't actually get to have his funeral for 2 weeks, and it was a closed casket. So it changes the dynamics of healing. And because of what was going on at that time with how many deaths were happening, we had a lot of news media. I mean, at one point we had to put a note on the door that said to just please not disturb us, because it was just, and I will say this, the Patriot Guard probably saved my family because they surrounded us. They protected us. They actually played guard with us and was like, the family needs rest. You can come back. And they kind of let people come through, because you have to share the grief with the nation. Perfect strangers coming up and you have no idea who these people are. And it's kind of weird because you feel like you're that now consoling them and you're no longer being consoled. So that's the hardest part when it first happened, it's a process. The other thing I would probably, and if you have a way to add it in, is they need to watch the movie called Taking Chance, because it tells how these young men and women come home and the care that is taken in bringing their bodies home and to their families. I say my family was lucky because the soldier that brought him home happened to be his sergeant. So he knew my brother. He had actually been sent home about 6 months before that because of an IED attack that he had experienced. So he actually got to bring him home. So he flew in from El Paso up to, and he brought him home. So it was a different journey for us because his escort actually knew him and got to share stories with us instead of an escort who didn't know him. I have other Gold Star family members that are friends, and one may be like a sibling, and like both brother and sister served in the military. I know one sibling who actually escorted her own brother home, and that's a different experience than even what I had, because she had to maintain military. I mean, she didn't cry at her own brother's funeral because she had to turn that military switch on.
What were you? How did you feel when your brother told you he was going to enlist?
I was mad.
You angry?
Yeah, I wasn't really mad as much as I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, have you thought about this? Because my own father, we had two different dads. My own father had served. So I grew up more military than he did. And we grew up in a small town. And I was just like, are you thinking like this is your only ticket out? And I was old enough. I remember 9/11 and I knew what war we were in, whereas he wasn't quite as old enough. I mean, it had happened, but he wasn't the same age I was when 9/11 happened. So I just didn't know if he understood what he was signing up for. So I did. I called his recruiting officer and was like, what did you tell him? Not that I could change his mind because he'd already signed the papers, but I was also very proud because I also knew it was going to be the best thing for my brother. And it really was. He was going to enlist. He was hyper. He needed that structure and routine. And so it was kind of like the initial, I'm 7 years older than you, so I know what you just did, and I'm very grateful that you're doing it, but I'm scared as your sister. But then there's the other part of me that's like, oh, this is going to be the best thing for you. I'm so proud of you. You know, and then I had to think about it because he enlisted when my parents were out of town. So I had to help him tell my parents.
We've been looking at videos of your brother or still pictures of your brother. It's a handsome man and very young. So young, these kids that go over there.
Yes, very young. He enlisted at 18. He graduated high school, which we were honestly, because so he and I were polar opposites. I graduated top of my class. I was, on the straight and narrow. I never, ever, ever, ever got in trouble. He, on the other hand, was not like that. Not a bad kid, but he was an active kid, and he lived life to the absolute fullest. We didn't even know if he was going to graduate high school until the week of graduation. So polar opposites.
Can I give you my mom's number in Beaumont, Texas, and you can share with her that I wasn't a bad kid. I was an active kid. I like the way you put that. An active kid.
He was just active. He loved life. Like, he loved it. And so it's, like I said, we were polar opposites. So the fact that he enlisted right after graduation, it was kind of like, because I'm the one who went to college, and he was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to just do this, and I'm going to go for it. And he did, and he loved it. He was getting ready to re-enlist. And I mean, he liked it. He even came home early for his R&R once, because he wasn't supposed to take his R&R so soon. And he took it early so his buddy could come home for the birth of his child. So, and then the mission that he was on, that he was killed on, was not even his mission. He wasn't supposed to go on it. He volunteered for it because his buddy was sick.
Thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you for letting me.
Wow. What a trooper. To wrap up our special Memorial Day edition of Ahysen Nation, I want to share with you the story of the unknown soldier. Now, even if you've heard this story, I hope this short video will enlighten you some. So through a special partnership with Lionheart Filmworks, please watch.
Not every soldier is recognized for his heroic actions. Indeed, one of the countless tragedies of war is that the bodies of many soldiers are never even identified. On August 3rd, 1956, 3 years after the end of the Korean War, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a bill to select and pay tribute to the unknown soldiers of the Korean War and World War II. These soldiers would be buried in the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington National Cemetery. The Tomb of the Unknowns was created in response to the mass casualties of World War I. The idea of honoring the unknown dead, of which there were so many in World War I, began in Great Britain in 1920. Then, in March 1921, the U.S. Congress approved a plan to return the body of an unknown American soldier from the war and bury him with full honors in a tomb to be constructed at the Memorial Amphitheater in Arlington National Cemetery. On Memorial Day, 1921, 4 unknown soldiers were exhumed from 4 World War I American cemeteries in France. They were placed in 4 identical caskets and set before a highly decorated veteran of that war, U.S. Army Sergeant Edward F. Younger. Sergeant Younger ceremonially selected 1 casket. He later spoke of his decision.
I was left alone in the chapel. There were 4 coffins, all unmarked and unnamed. The one that I placed the roses on would be the one brought home and placed in the National Shrine. I walked around the coffins 3 times. Then suddenly I stopped. What caused me to stop, I don't know. It was as though something had pulled me. I placed the roses on the coffin in front of me. I can still remember the odd feeling that I had, standing there alone.
The chosen unknown was transported to the United States aboard the USS Olympia. Those remaining were interred in the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery, France. The selected unknown lay in state at the Capitol Rotunda until midnight on November 10th, 1921. On November 11th, Armistice Day, the casket of that unknown soldier was carried from the Rotunda to Arlington National Cemetery under a military escort. Behind the caisson bearing the flag-draped casket walked President Harding, Vice President Coolidge, Chief Justice Taft, and the other justices of the Supreme Court, members of the Cabinet, Senate, and House of Representatives, generals and other distinguished officers from America's wars, and recipients of the Medal of Honor. President Harding officiated at the interment ceremonies at the Memorial Amphitheater at Arlington National Cemetery. He conferred upon the unknown soldier the Medal of Honor and the Distinguished Service Cross. Representatives of foreign governments allied with the U.S. in World War I participated as well, bestowing upon the unknown their own highest military awards. The United States reciprocated this gesture, honoring an unknown soldier from nations of France, Great Britain, Belgium, Italy, and Romania with the Medal of Honor. In the history of the Medal of Honor, these are the only 5 instances in which the award was presented to a foreign soldier. After World War II, plans were made for the selection and burial of an unknown from that war. But fighting in Korea broke out before the selection process had begun, and the decision was made to postpone until a more appropriate time. That time turned out to be 1958, when unknowns from World War II and the Korean War were selected for burial in the Tomb of the Unknowns. The final selection of the unknown from the Korean War took place on May 15th, 1958. All of the unknown war dead from that war had been buried in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. In that place, 4 candidates for burial in the Tomb of the Unknowns were placed in identical caskets, draped with American flags. Master Sergeant Ned Lyle, a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross for heroic action in Korea, was designated to make the final selection. He placed a wreath of blue and white carnations on one casket and saluted the remains of the soldier inside. The selection of the World War II unknown took place 11 days later aboard the USS Canberra. Earlier stages of the selection process had resulted in 1 remaining candidate from the European Theater of Operations and 1 candidate from the Pacific Theater. Hospital Corpsman First Class William R. Charette, recipient of the Medal of Honor for actions in the Korean War, made the final selection. The selected unknown, along with the unknown from the Korean War, arrived in Washington on May 28, 1958. They lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda until 1 p.m. on May 30th. As the procession moved toward Arlington National Cemetery, the two caissons, each carrying one unknown, traveled side by side. When they reached the cemetery, they shifted into a column led by the caisson bearing the World War II unknown soldier. As the caissons entered the cemetery, 20 jet fighters and bombers passed overhead, with one plane missing from each formation. The casket of the World War II unknown soldier was placed in front of President Eisenhower, and the Korean War unknown soldier in front of Vice President Nixon. The Marine Band played the national anthem, and then a bugler sounded attention 3 times. After a long moment of silence, President Eisenhower placed a Medal of Honor on each casket. The unknowns of World War II and the Korean War were interred in the plaza beside their World War I comrade. The tomb sarcophagus was placed above the grave of the unknown soldier of World War I in April 1931. The sarcophagus is constructed of 7 rectangular pieces of white marble, together weighing 79 tons. On the west panel of the sarcophagus, facing the amphitheater, are the words, "Here rests, in honored glory, an American soldier, known but to God." On the east panel, facing the Capitol, 3 Greek figures have been sculpted. On the left stands Peace, holding a dove in one hand. On the right stands Valor, bearing a broken sword in his hands. In the center stands Victory, holding hands with Peace while extending an olive branch to Valor. The north and south panels present a total of 6 inverted wreaths, each representing a major campaign of World War I. West of the sarcophagus are the crypts of unknowns from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Those 3 graves are marked with white marble slabs that lie flush with the plaza. Since April 6, 1948, the tomb of the unknown soldier has been guarded 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, regardless of weather. In blazing sun, freezing snow, and even in the face of hurricanes, the sentinels continue their watch. The sentinels, members of the 3rd Infantry, or Old Guard, are famous for the precision of their march and changing of the guard. The sentinel marches 21 steps across a black mat, past the crypts of each unknown. He then makes a crisp 90-degree turn to face east for 21 seconds. He then makes another 90-degree turn, facing north for 21 seconds. A crisp shoulder arms movement places the rifle on the shoulder nearest the visitors to signify that the sentinel stands between the tomb and any threat. After that moment, the sentinel paces 21 steps north, turns, and repeats the process. Every hour during the winter and every half hour during summer daylight hours, the sentinels conduct the changing of the guard ceremony. As the new sentinel approaches the relief commander, slowly and with great precision, conducts a white glove inspection of the sentinel's weapon. The two then march to the center of the mat, where the active sentinel stops his walk and all 3 men salute the tomb. The relief commander instructs the active sentinel, "Pass on your orders." The sentinel replies, "Post and orders remain as directed." The relieving sentinel responds, "Orders acknowledged." The relieving sentinel then steps into position at the center of the black mat. The relief commander and relieved sentinel exit, and the new sentinel begins his march. The unknown soldiers serve to remind us that not all actions of valor are witnessed and recorded in war. We do not know the stories of these men, but we know they gave their lives in a war they did not start to protect the freedom of people who would never know their names. They demonstrate the courage and heroism of every man and woman who goes into combat in service of their nation. They will face threats we can hardly imagine in an attempt to eliminate the dangers that are posed to the men in the trench beside them.
So while you and me, and I'll be doing it too, enjoy barbecues and swimming pools and time with friends this Memorial Day weekend, let us stop on Monday just for, if not a moment, to remember our honored dead. Thanks for watching this special edition of Ahysen Nation. I'll see you next week.